Outbreak, possibly Treyarch's most controversial endeavor. Outbreak is a mode strictly separate from the fan-favorite round-based. Zombies has always been known for a round-based shooter. You kill zombies, you go up rounds, zombies start out slow, they get faster as the match goes on, and they get tougher as well. Outbreak is the complete antithesis of that, as you go at your own pace. In round-based, you are gated by the fact that there are rounds and a certain amount of zombies per round, and when those zombies all die, you go up in rounds, plus bleed out timers, pretty much ensuring that the match won't ever just stagnate. Outbreak is different in the fact that it's objective based. You choose when the zombies get stronger, and the fact that it's objective based too means the zombies aren't the main focus. They are more of a side thing while you go around the actual map and do objectives in order to power yourself up rather than just killing zombies for points. That works just as well, however, the amount of points you get are much less than they would be in a normal round-based map. Instead, you are expected to go around and do objectives. You can already tell why this mode is super controversial, and even today, 2.5 years later, it's still extremely controversial. Some people like it, some people hate it. I personally, as you can tell by the title, I fall in the middle. I think it's fine for what it is. Outbreak tried something different, kind of like what Transit did, but at least this time I would argue it succeeded in trying to do what it was trying to do. There's a healthy amount of content inside of Outbreak to do. Much more than you would think, and much more than Vanguard, unfortunately. But that's an entire game, this is a side mode with even more. But that's a rant for another day. Alongside the zombie slaying in Outbreak, as we talked about, there's of course objectives, and those objectives range from a ton of different things. There's one where you protect a rover, there's one where you go into a holdout objective, there's one where you feed a dragon that looks exactly like the dragon from Horizon Drac, and even Forsaken, spoiler alert, has a minigame regarding this dragon and the fact that it's from Horizon Drac. I have no idea why this is here. If there's any lore significance, feel free to let me know. There's actually boss fights as well. If you remember from Firebase Z at the end of the Easter egg where you fought the giant order before you left the map, that order now is actually its own boss fight that you can encounter in the hub world. And while it isn't super difficult, it's still very cool. Other objectives amount to finding chests, freeing spirits. There's honestly a ton of different objectives you can do, and there's enough objectives inside the mode to keep things from getting monotonous. And speaking of keeping things from getting monotonous, something positive I would like to talk about is actually the fact that there's a lot of maps you can run around in Outbreak. If you're somehow unaware, Outbreak is comprised of multiplayer maps, actually, surprise surprise. Instead of having a completely unique zombie set piece, we're just reusing multiplayer maps again. And unfortunately, unlike something like Firebase Z and Die Maschine, it doesn't actually stand out a lot like those maps do, with like a lot of changes, you know, a dark ether interference, stuff like that. That doesn't exist in Outbreak. It's just the maps with a few zombies thrown in here and there to hopefully create a sense of immersion. While I personally don't like the use of the multiplayer maps, I do think they work out pretty well for what they do, and the amount of objectives you get on them too is very cool. There's a lot of variety in the maps you get as well. There's a lot of locales you can go to, and there's even a boat you can go to as well, which will surely shake up the gameplay a lot and create some really cool ideas for objectives. But speaking of good ideas, this mode isn't just objective based, it actually has some unique features to it. For one, you can actually get multiple wonder weapons inside of Outbreak. Unfortunately, I hate to be the very bad news here, but the Forsaken and Mauer der Toten wonder weapons are not part of Outbreak, unfortunately. I'm not sure why, but I heard it was really hard to get them working properly. But you can at least get the Ray K, the Ray Gun, and all the DIE variants, which is definitely really nice, and being able to have them all in the same area is very cool. Along with that, there's also a completely new piece of equipment inside of Outbreak specifically called the Grappling Gun. The grappling gun's exactly what it says on the tin. It's definitely the most fun piece of equipment inside of Outbreak in my opinion. You use a gun, you shoot a grappling hook at wherever you want to go, and then you take off to the skies. With the power of Mule Kick, you can carry up to 10 of these with a single purchase. They're very cheap, and they are definitely one of the most fun parts of Outbreak. As you're going through objectives, completing main objectives, and then making the match even more difficult and more fun. Speaking of fun, I would actually like to talk about this map's Easter egg. Well, I'm not going to go over the steps, as me personally, I'm not very familiar with how to do the steps. I have gone through this Easter egg a few times for Outbreak, and there's actually two separate ones. There's one Easter egg where you learn about Operation Inversia, which of course concludes with the Legion boss fight, which I will get into in a minute. And then there's a second Outbreak Easter egg where there's a completely new area made specifically for Outbreak, but it ends with a really lame Orda boss fight. But the Easter egg I'd like to talk about is the Legion boss fight. The steps to get there I remember not being super difficult. I recently did it, though I wasn't the one actually doing the steps. I had a good amount of fun going through it. But the Legion boss fight, holy mackerel. That will really put you through the ringer, let me tell you that. It is by far the hardest Treyarch boss fight, which is ironic considering how easy Cold War is commonly referred to as, and this boss fight is anything but easy. And there's a timer as well that can really catch you off guard. And you can see in this footage here, me and my teammate actually got destroyed by the timer, unfortunately, because we didn't come prepared and we got smoked by Legion. So yeah, the timer definitely can be very difficult, but it's a very fun boss fight, and overall, I honestly really do like Outbreak. I don't have a lot to say about it, just like most of Cold War. It's definitely very unique and very fun, but it's definitely not my favorite thing, but I'm a pretty big fan of Outbreak. I think what it did very well. What it did poorly, it did pretty bad. Like, I personally feel like the beginning of Outbreak is very slow and boring. It's not until you get to about round 4 or 5 where things get super interesting. But I do like the amount of exploration you can do and the amount of trials there are. I just think it's a little too slow in the beginning. But there is a cool strategy you can do to skip rounds. But overall, I think Outbreak's pretty good. It's nothing crazy, but it's nothing terrible either.